what is the status of employment for persons with disabilities? Well, it's not a pretty picture, all right? We're running about a 60 to 80% unemployment rate, and we're more likely to experience persistent poverty. And the outcomes are even worse for people with intellectual and developmental disorders. In fact, the National Longitudinal Transition Study, RU, I think just recently in 2021, might have been 2020, reinforced an earlier study that showed that of all the different disabilities in the special ed area, that the autism spectrum disorder was the hardest one to find employment for. And that was the most challenging one, okay? And yet, if you talk to businesses, they've all heard about autism, they just don't know exactly what it is. So it's up to us to explain to them that people with autism really have a lot of gifts. We just got to fit them into the right situation with the right supports. Okay, next one. So despite the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and there's been research and policy promoting competitive integrated employment, we've still got too many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, especially, not engaged in work. And so we end up looking like this. Next slide. And we've got still about 5,000 either adult activity centers or sheltered workshops. Although the United States Department of Justice is using Olmstead, which was a Supreme Court decision in 1999, and then now using Title I of the ADA to go to states and to seriously question what they're doing and whether or not they're promoting integration for individuals like they read ADA. And recently all the workshops in Rhode Island and Vermont were shut because of that. Now I have a slide that's going to last about 5 minutes. It's actually a video. Some of you have already seen it, I think, or if you haven't, at least if you've been to St. Mary's, you've seen Damien. He's a young man with autism, and you've already seen Alyssa. He's a good, perfect walking example of success. And so, enjoy. Go ahead.
Doing what you're doing.
I make a transformer.
On
5.
Ready, Damien?
Yes, I'm ready.
Damien had an internship in the inpatient pharmacy. He was responsible for checking all of the drugs. They're individually packed and checking the expiration dates. And he also was responsible for cleaning the shelves and just really keeping it very organized in the department. This is something that they often needed a tech to do, but it really wasn't getting done as frequently as it probably should have been.
There is 6 runs to go, right?
This turned into a job because as the internship was coming to a close, the department really didn't see how they could continue without having him there to complete this job for them, because it really is critical. The job really evolved. In addition to checking the expiration dates, Damien also learned how to restock drugs, and then he learned how to make deliveries to the outpatient infusion center. This kind of came about because Damien was getting done with his work quickly, and he has a lot of energy, and that energy was being released in the department, which was causing a distraction to his coworkers. He has a tendency to script loudly, and he was actually getting on coworkers' computers and finding things to fill his own time with, which were not productive and were distracting to the department. His supervisors wanted to continue to have him working there, and so they contacted his job coach to see what we could do to continue to use his assets, but also to help out the department. And so that's how the delivery started. The outpatient infusion center is attached to the hospital, and this is where patients are going to receive chemotherapy and other cancer treatments.
Thank you for doing that.
When we're waiting in this room, how should we wait?
By the door.
And what's our volume?
Volume down. Volume down. I wait for Jessica in there.
Damien, it's okay to speak in a regular volume.
She's in the room.
Okay. We just can't shout things like, "I'm finished." Does that make sense?
Nope. not make sense.
When we're at work?
I keep the volume down. I keep the voice down.
How about your body?
Keep my body still.
Hello.
I knock by the door.
Okay, Damien.
It's
what
another
number
run.
is this?
6.
Right.
This run is number 6. Non-chemo. No way, Stephen. No way. Yes.
At the time, a volunteer was responsible for making the deliveries to the outpatient infusion center from the pharmacy, or if a volunteer wasn't there, one of the pharmacists or the techs had to do it. It really wasn't done on a strict schedule, and patients were having to wait several hours to get the treatment. The inpatient pharmacy and the outpatient infusion center decided to collaborate and create this job for Damien so that he was helping their department to run more efficiently to provide better care to the patients who were waiting for treatment.
I finish. Number 6 is finish. Finish. I work in the pharmacy and OPIC. I open a suitcase, wait for chemo and on chemo. I check expiration dates at work. I pull expired drugs and find month. I stay off this computers at work. I eat lunch. I follow the rules. I follow the plan.
Who wrote that?
I wrote it.
That's great. Damien's been working for almost 5 years, and we do continue to provide him with social supports at work. At this point, we are no longer implementing a self-monitoring plan and working on it together 4 times throughout the day. His department has been trained on how to enforce the rules, and Damien is at the point now where he has written his own plan, and he knows what the expectations are, and it's written clearly for him by himself.
Where we do next, Stephen? Where we do next?
Chemo and non-chemo.
They're both.
Yep, they're both.
Yes, they're both. What time is it?
Time to go.
10:30, please.
10:30.
The answer is 10:30. Run number 7.
We do continue to communicate regularly with the departments, and they know that they're able to contact us if there is a situation that becomes larger than what they feel that they're able to handle, or that they need additional support. Then they always call us, and we come and provide immediate support to the department and the employee.
Okay. So by now, we'll go to the next slide. But now you're beginning to really see the power of a really good employment specialist. Okay. Alyssa's been with us a good 6 or 7 years. And unfortunately, most of the people that we have, are, similarly very competent, and mostly have gained the trust of the company that we work at, different companies that we're in right now. So, Damien had an internship there, and then they hired him, and he requires less and less help. And our internships, by the way, the very first internship got started with some help from the Virginia Department of Education. But then, for those of you who are, go to the next slide, please. Okay. For those of you who are in VR and are looking at expanding your vocational, your project search, or your strength on success or internship programs, our voc rehab department came up with a milestone program. In fact, Joe Ashley, I believe, really took the lead on this. And at the different intervals of success, we were able to receive, some funding to continue, supporting people like Alyssa. Alyssa is the type of person that could talk to somebody like Doug that you saw earlier, okay? Easier than I could, all right? Because, she's there all the time, and the trust has been established. So again, remember, we had a why work from the business standpoint. Now we have why work from the supply side. Good pay, healthcare benefits if he wants them, control over job selection, upward mobility if he wants to leave. Our research over 10 years has shown that people with autism, at least, become more independent as a function of work. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's better than $15,000 a year staying in a day program for the rest of your life, or just sitting at home. Next slide. So what does Alyssa do? What she does is support employment. She also does customized employment. We'll start with that. Support employment is basically real work in an integrated work setting, presumably for people with more severe challenges, because somebody with milder challenges wouldn't need Alyssa helping as much, but initially doing a lot of ongoing support. And that's where Voc Rehab often will step right up and help pay for those services. And then maybe Medicaid waiver will provide the long-term services. In the meantime, business is not paying anything, but is getting, wonderful support services from highly trained staff. We just get these people, get these partners together, all right? And the Voc Rehab person is driving the train, basically driving the train to try and get the business and the job coach working together and the family working together, and often dealing with SSI and SSDI issues. Okay, go ahead. So if you want to go back 30 or 40 years, it is a pretty big paradigm shift. Again, I hope you don't mind me picking on you if you're on here, Kathy, but Kathy would remember at one time we were basically running only centers and we weren't providing supports in the businesses. Now it's much more commonplace for supporting, coming up with individualized supports needs, like the job accommodation network can provide, but can be delivered by an Alyssa Brooke in any of the number of businesses. Okay, so that's an advantage that you have if you're trying to be, create a relationship with a business. You say, well, look, we could bring an employment specialist in here. Okay, all right, next. I've got about 2 or 3 more slides, so I'll probably go through these word things pretty quick. Marks, by the way, is Marks, not Mark. Okay, it's only about 2 minutes. Shoot.
Marks.
Yes.
We're not working without the gown.
Perfect. Way.
Let's go get it.
Marks is very particular about keeping himself neat and clean. And one of the things that he was doing, he was problem solving on his own because he felt that his pants were getting dusty, the bottoms of his pants were getting dusty. So he took it upon himself to alter his uniform.
Hey, Mark.
What's that?
Now something else is missing.
My gloves. Yeah, perfect.
We don't need to follow him that way.
Come right back with those gloves on.
One of the sets of his scrubs, he actually took a scissor to and cut them so they were now cropped pants so that they weren't getting dusty. And then when we talked to him about that, he started to roll his pants up, and that does not fit the uniform requirements. It's also an issue with infection control to have your skin showing like that in the hospital. And so as many times as we would remind him verbally about this, it didn't seem to stick. So we took a picture of him, and this picture was posted up on the door of the linen room with his permission. And each time before he walked out to go make a delivery, he was able to check himself and make sure that he was properly dressed.
Go ahead, take it that way.
Huh.
Just keep it right there, keep it right there. I'll bring this one in. And we good, thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Perfect once again.
Yeah, you're like one. Cool.
He helps me get my carts, the soil linen onto the carts, and then I get my carts onto the truck. Mark is a very good worker. very studious, very hardworking, and without him, I would have a hard day, put it that way. So I'm thankful that he gets the opportunity to work with me every day, and I enjoy working with him. Thank you.
Okay, so this thing called supported employment here, just a very quick overview of what goes on, just because I think many of you already are aware of this, but if we get to the next slide, please. There's basically 4 basic functions that we're looking at. We need a profile of that job seeker. We need to develop a job, find a job. That's where that business partnership comes in. But then we don't stop there. We have to provide training, and we don't stop there either. Because even if people are presumably trained, if there's a different supervisor or the person has a problem at home or with transportation or decides they want to switch jobs, there needs to be a follow-on mechanism. And this is where Voc Rehab will work with a community service program to provide follow-along services. And the employment specialist is right in the middle of this, working with the VR counselor as partners, again, on the supply side. Okay, next one. And so in assessment, you're looking at not necessarily assessments that would take place in a room, but situational assessments that might happen actually right in a work site for 3 or 4 hours or for a day or 2 days to see productivity, what interests are, how much physical ability they have, do they get tired, how well do they take criticism from the employment specialist. Next slide. I'm not a big fan of long tests. I'm a bigger fan of short, real life assessments, situational assessments in real work settings. Okay. These assessments should reflect the vocational goal. Okay. Next slide. We'll take a look at James here. We did a long-term assessment of him in a respiratory therapy department, looking at oximeters from a biohazard room. We would have never done this in 1983. We were putting people at Wendy's. Okay. You hear this guy's going in instead of going to Wendy's. Not that there's anything wrong with Wendy's. Love Wendy's. Okay. I'm happy to get a milkshake at Wendy's. Happy to. But there should be a diversity of jobs based on people's interests. And if you have an internship, you find out whether you like it. You do an assessment. You see how he would fit in something like this. Next one. Next slide. What do we learn? We learned that he could follow written instructions. Bit of a perfectionist. Okay. Barriers. He really needs a rigid schedule and could be a self-stimmer. Now, a little self-stimming, not too bad. You'll meet somebody a little bit later here who's a self-stimmer, not a big deal, okay? It's all about what the business will tolerate, and a lot of businesses will tolerate a great deal if they're getting good performance from their worker, okay? Next slide. So you hear these terms, customized employment, support employment. Not the purpose of this presentation to do a major breakdown of the two of them different. Let's just say that customized employment is a part of support employment that has got some very unique different aspects to it. Still competitive integrated employment, still real work for real pay, still not in a sheltered workshop, still using job coaching supports, but using something called discovery and a more detailed job negotiation. The last two are uniquely different and extremely helpful. Go ahead. This is not customized employment. This is a sheltered workshop or an adult activity center. This is what we want to try and avoid. This is what the Department of Justice is going to we'll probably start shutting them down again now that we've got a person like Merlin Garland that's going to be running the Department of Justice. I imagine they'll be swinging hard again to go after states that are not integrating but are segregating. Go ahead. Yeah, so this is customized employment. There you see some graduates and some people working. Discovery, next slide, is, remember I talked about job profiling? Well, this is more of that. Home visits, interviewing more people. Really works especially well, in my view, my personal view, for more challenging individuals that's harder to find jobs for, because you get more information. Okay, they tell you more and you learn more. And remember those questions earlier that I was showing you about what you should be asking business about: overtime, temporary work, having things that weren't getting done that needed to be done. Voila, here you are. Somebody could come in and they might not even have posted the job, and you could maybe offer somebody that could do this. Next slide. And that would fit in very nicely to this whole concept of negotiating for a position that maybe isn't even posted yet. Pretty cool. Okay, next one. Types of job development. Here's our lingo. Here's our jargon, folks. Job carving, job negotiation, job sharing, self-employment. Well, self-employment, that's a gig economy, all right? I'm not sure what job carving would be. I've heard Erin Riley, say that she thinks it's more like Thanksgiving, all right? But it's basically breaking up a job into different tasks based on what a person can do, rather than trying to beat them over a head to teach them something that would use up all of VR's money on tasks that they, probably isn't going to learn. All right, next slide. So if we're going to go into Unum, or we're going to go into Kindred, or we're going to go into IBM, one of the departments, what are we going to offer for work supports? Job coaches like Alyssa, transportation options, help with assistive technology. These are all things VR can offer, pay for, give expertise for. It's not just getting money from VR, it's getting their expertise as well as from the CRPs. So let's take a quick look at, this will take about 4 minutes. We're about on time here. Dillon is another guy, very interesting fellow. And I'll let him speak for himself. Go ahead.
Who are you?
We're getting individuals like Dillon from the school system. It's transition age student, so transitioning from school into work. And what we've had the good experience of doing with them is going through kind of 10 to 12 week long internships, which are basically just assessment experiences on steroids. So he was just able to be in each internship experience for a lot longer. And he had 3 different experiences, one on the labor and delivery unit, one in the laboratory services department, and one in the emergency department. It took all 3 internships for us to kind of find the right ticket for Dillon.
Fun. Skill that we call peel packing, where we take individualized instruments and sterilize them separately from a tray version, if you will, with multiple instruments. Again, it's a very time-consuming task. It has to be done specifically in a certain way.
Dillon has several types of supports that he uses while he's working, and they've been ongoing as his needs have changed and as his tasks have changed and as we've noticed different behaviors. But this is one that we use to try. We've spent a lot of time working on emotional identification for Dillon and how he's feeling that day. Because what we've learned through this process is that if he comes in on a good note and can get started on time, then he's usually good throughout the day. And as we were trying to fade support, we were trying to identify at what point in time we needed to be called in from staff in order to come in and provide support to get him started. So this is the volcano scale that Dillon uses, and he filled this out with his school staff, and then we did it again while we were here. And these are some additional volume supports for him.
We can just point and say, okay, you're way up here on your volume when you need to be down here. And then, by showing him that, we can go up and ask him, where are you right now in your volume? And so, he'll hear that and then follow through by pointing on the chart. And it's pretty interesting to see that sometimes he's just not aware of where his volume is. We don't even know if he's aware that, he's doing it out loud.
He doesn't use these ones nearly as much because we were able to fade the supports, but we keep them there just in case a new coworker comes on and wants to learn more about Dillon. Initially, one of the job coaches would fill this out with him. He would get a plus or a minus if he completed the step, and now Dillon keeps track of this himself. But Dillon had a really hard time staying focused with his work. He did a lot of stimming, so he would he really likes deep pressure, so he would press into his face and squeeze his body. A lot of jumping around if he was agitated, and the things that would agitate him were usually too much instruction from us and too much correction, because he does like to work by himself. So you can see there was kind of a disconnect where he wanted to be independent, but he was having a hard time focusing and staying on track.
Sometimes it can interfere with his work pace and his rhythm, but the volume is really what's more disruptive to the work environment.
There are the individual workstations, so Dillon wouldn't be working close to somebody else, so he kind of had his own space where if he needed to kind of calm himself down, do some bouncing, kind of press in on himself, that it was appropriate for him to do so, and he wasn't going to interfere with somebody else's work. If you can match him to an environment that allows him to do some of his stimming, take some of his time to kind of process things, then as far as getting the work done, as far as counting and doing those sorts of things, he's going to get it done.
100.
Okay. So we're coming near an end. I've only got another handful of slides here, not that many to share with you, but I don't think I would do justice to this presentation if I didn't at least address a little bit about how do we get people that are still in high school to work. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of slides and what some of the more recent research has taught us about this. What are some of the predictors of post-school success? Well, work experience, vocational education, inclusive education, occupational coursework, self-determination. These are all correlates of success. They're not evidence-based practice. They're not controlled research studies. They are correlated studies that highly suggest that these types of activities in high school will lead to a job. If you turn to the next slide, however, we can take a look and see that the most powerful behavior that young people with disabilities, of all disabilities, can do before they lose the mandated special education law that the federal government gives them through the Individuals with Disabilities for Education Act, is to actually have a job before they leave high school. So previous paid work experience prior to graduation has been repeatedly shown to be a strong predictor. And in fact, one of my colleagues, Eric Carter from Vanderbilt University, is conducting through one of our R&T centers a randomized clinical trial that is going to provide some evidence-based research that shows that people that have had jobs before they left school, as opposed to those that didn't, were more likely to have employment on follow along. But we do know that internships such as Project Search, and those are some of the examples you've been seeing, Strength on Success, the Marriott program, and there's others, along with apprenticeships, some of the community college activities, post-secondary education activities that have been going on, dual enrollment. Those are all things that lead very nicely into employment. What you want is a seamless, you don't want people going home and sitting at home with no work. Okay, go ahead. I think we'll skip this last video here. because I'd like to share with you one last tool that one of our colleagues have developed, and then leave about 20 minutes or so for comments or questions, whatever you would like to do. Businesses are saying to us, and have been, how do you measure whether our workplace culture is really inclusive enough for workers with disabilities? We want this to happen, but we don't really know how to measure it. So the person that I mentioned earlier that is so brilliant, Fong Chan, he and his team from the University of Wisconsin, Tim Tansey and others, have been developing and have validated a reliable tool, go ahead, that is called the Disability Inclusion Profiler. And it's set for executives, and it's also set for middle management to utilize. There's a number of domains that you can utilize to evaluate yourself pre-test and post-test. And some of the practices are like communicating the commitments, the infrastructure that they've put in place, for example, within their HR department and resources. Do they have disability management specialists? Have they allocated funding for disability inclusion training? Have they set utilization goals for employment? That would be at the executive level, okay? And then at the middle management and the staff level, are these managers helping to create paid internship programs or summer disability employment programs? How well have they created MOUs, partnership agreements with state voc rehab agencies, or partnered with community rehab organizations so that they could put in place a preferred vendor operation? So for example, if you want to work with, Nextera, or you want to work with Dominion, or you want to work with Duke as a utility, and they prefer to only have one vendor working with them, have you put that in place, and not necessarily be the only person ever that would refer, but would be the primary person that Nextera would go to, or Duke or Dominion would go to, okay? And other opportunities also there for disability inclusion training at the department level, all right? So what we've tried to do with this tool, and we'll be putting it into place, we hope in the next couple of years, will be to show businesses how this really scientifically developed tool that Dr. Chan developed with 460 businesses could be used to facilitate evaluating whether your business is actually becoming a business-friendly culture to people with disability. That would be really helpful for the supply side to know and to see. But I think it's going to cut both ways.